Hey guys, this is Rob speaking, and in today's little dev update we are going to talk about mainly three things. First up is the official design competition 2022. Massive, absolutely massive, and you don't want to miss it. Then, second, I'm going to show you the upcoming patches features in terms of engine designer. Basically all has been now implemented in the game. We're still looking for some, in general, better usability, making it feel right and so on. And then after that I'm going to show you some example builds of engines within those new systems. Alright, first things first, let's get started. The 2022 Automation Official Design Competition. For those of you who remember, who are like old now, because this was like 4 years ago we ran this one. Last time that was pretty successful overall. I would say that we have seen a lot of good cars, and now automation is way more powerful. So we're looking forward to seeing what can be done today, and we have prepared a massive challenge for you in 10 different categories. And no, I'm lying. It is 12 different categories, because why not? Even more. Even more work. You are allowed to enter 6 of them or put 6 cars into one of them. It's your choice. Well, no, and you can do everything in between as well. So multiple entries allowed and so on. But let's talk about the categories, or at least name the categories really quick, because there will be something for everyone. We have a people's car category 1946 to 1960. We have a 1955 to 1970s luxury GT car category as well. And then American family cars around the 60s. Then we have off-roaders around the 70s. And then we have race cars, touring cars, sports cars, prototype cars, or rally cars, all in the golden era of racing. That is around 75. And then JDM sports coupes and sedans around 1990, of course. 1946 to 2020, the history of the pickup truck. We have a creative and crazy category. A category for luxury car interior. Yes, for all those crazy players who are investing hours upon hours into making excellent and amazing looking interiors, this is your category. Then we have the 2035 concept car category. Near future hypercars are yet another category. And then we have just a simple one, that is best picture. Of course there are prizes to win, and there will be a fair amount of coverage of this in terms of where there will be judging videos. This will be a massive undertaking, but I think it will be worth it. The cars are scored just like in the photo competition. Overall appearance, design consistency, attention to detail, and creativity. And also, we do have some rather, how should I put it, big hitting, I would say is a good term, judges as VIP judges lined up for this. Not for every category, but there are a few in there. And those will be revealed after a little while. But there's one already which kind of shows you the caliber that we're going with. Because it is none other than Klaus Chichora, who is... Okay, many of you won't know who that is, but from just the name. But when I say he's the global head of design for the Volkswagen Group, you should be getting a little bit excited at least. And there are at least 2 more that we have lined up, but they are not perfectly confirmed just yet. But we shall reveal that after a while, once we know ourselves that this is going to happen. Anyway, so the stakes are high. The competition will be amazing. I hope we're getting some really fantastic designs from it. I'm stoked to be a kind of lowly judge on it as well. But that is probably not what you are asking right now. Your question should be, when is the submission deadline? And fortunately, it is quite some ways out still, so you have plenty of time to grab those older cars that you have built and properly polish them up and build new ones for the different categories. The submission deadline is the 5th of October, so you have a little bit more than a month to partake into one, several, or most of the categories. No, half is actually the maximum you can partake in. But I hope everyone here is joining in. This will be a frantic fun, and I hope you're getting some great content from it as well. Very importantly, I have linked all that below in the description, and you should really check it out. It will be fantastic. Speaking of competitions, we are currently in the process of wrapping up the photo competition, which kind of is a trial balloon for this big one. And you should see the video come up reasonably soonish, like within maybe a week and a few days, and that will be exciting too. All right, look out for that one. And now let's get into the actual little dev update. So you will have been wondering where that update that was promised is, and it was just, as always, more or less, taking longer than expected. I've been working on it every day since like 6 weeks, and that includes weekends. And no, I'm not asking for any pity party here. I'm just noting that a lot of focus has been given to this aspect. It is the complete revamp of the engine designer. And you have seen the revamp of the turbos already. Now what you should expect here is equal revamp of everything else in the engine designer in terms of calculations. Basically, it is a completely from scratch set of calculations for everything that is power and torque and everything that contributes to power and torque. So, a complete from scratch rewrite of all the fundamentals of the engine designer. And of course, that takes a while. But yeah, don't tell that to Killer Rob 6 weeks ago, because he would probably have given up or something. No, not a quitter. Anyway, what we are going to take a look at is just building a new engine. And with that, I want to illustrate one very important point, and that is, no, the engine designer has not become super advanced, complex, difficult to handle, but it has become a lot more deep if you want it. So, let's see. We're just building a standard engine in 2012, because that is our standard year for automation. And then we shall see what happens. So far, nothing there. Oh, probably need to be putting on some harmonic dampers. One thing that you're already noticing. What? Why is this not 86? Well, that's because this is kind of a bug. We recently changed it so that you have a wider range of stroke. And that means to the downside. Yes. You can build an engine like this now as family capacity, and then go over here and then make that. I wouldn't recommend it, and it's going to be shit, but you can do it if you want to. So back to 8686, and no changes there. Also, the variant capacity slider range has been increased from 15%, for stroke that is, from 15% to 30%. So you have a really decent range within the families of engines you're making. That's good. But let's continue on here. We're building our engine just as normal, and then you see, oops, something has changed here. Yes, it has. RPM, this will probably be the worst muscle memory short circuit in your brains of all time. RPM limit no longer being on the fuel system tab, but rather in the top end tab. And you see something else in here. VVL profile and VVL RPM? What is this? Rob? Well, it is exactly what you think it is. You can change the switchover point for the VVL. So, okay, I said we are going to build a normal engine, but now we are building a VVL engine. Alright, well, just leaving that as you all know it, like VVL profile, whatever, and just leave it where it is. A little bit more revvability there. We are leaving it naturally aspirated for now. Injection and direct injection, single throttle, and which one do we check? Let's build an economy. No, we have VVL, so let's go for a mid. 95, and can't set the RPM limiter anymore. It was getting a little too squeezed, and that is because you see that slider in here. Carb size is now separated from manifold size. And manifold size was previously known as system size, which included like intake size. Sizing of intakes is not really a thing. It's the manifolds that are the critical part. You always just make the intakes such that they flow enough air, otherwise you'd be stupid. But manifolds, there you have resonances and all that stuff. You do have a little bit in the intake as well, but let's forget about that. That's the smaller part of it. Manifold size, very important. So this is now just acting like header size. We have the fuel map slider there, octane margin, no longer called timing and octane margin. And we're going to get to that, but not relevant for your just straight up simple build. So let's just keep it there. And then we have a new header. It has the exact same graphic as the short cast header. So cast low, cast mid. There was a very big gap here between the tubular headers in terms of performance and the short cast headers, and the cast mid kind of fills that hole. Compact cast, just the log, because it's compact. That is just to bring home the fact that that is kind of the analog to the manifold that is compact. So cast compact basically, and we just choose a three-way cat and reverse flow, and there we have our engine, and it has a kink in it. It's VVL kicked in, yo. So yeah, let's tune that a bit so that it's not as awkward looking, and then we should be good. So switchover point needs to be there. Is that where you want it? And you see a new feature here as well. It kept the old curve. And now you see the difference. That is a very important feature in terms of telling you what your changes actually meant for the power and torque curve. This has just been implemented and it's not fully functional yet, so you will see some weird quirks. The way it is going to work, let me explain that quickly, is that when you enter a section here and make a change, let's say to springs and lifters, then it should take, and it does work when I just hold the slider at the moment. It will work with the button clicks as well and so on. But if you hold it, it will then automatically hold the engine for you. You see there it says power auto held and torque auto held as well. And then you can move about the slider and you see what changes you're making compared to how you started before you started moving the slider. So you will always get direct feedback on how your choices are affecting the current engine. But yes, I digress. That was a new feature, a really handy one. And what you will see here is this power torque curve is way more realistic than it has ever been. Because all of a sudden, automation knows what low-end torque is. That was something that was in general missing in the old calculations and in the new calculations as well. And that has just recently been tweaked such that we have a little bit more grunt down low. Because in automation, the old version in 4.1 and in 4.2, we were pretty good at being able to reproduce the peak torque and peak power numbers. But when you looked at dyno charts, what you were seeing is that especially for performance engines, the torque down low was abysmal. Like you were 30-40% short in terms of torque. The torque curve would just drop off like a stone for the low end, and that is not entirely realistic. So that has been addressed, and with that we have way more realistic power torque curves. So you were seeing that, yeah, basically it was not that hard to build an engine in this. I mean, okay, your header flow here seems to be complaining a bit, and that's maybe what we should be looking at next. Flow has been revised. and is now showing you the flow percentage for the different components. And 100 is basically green, and blue is 0%, or well, I don't know where we draw the line, 30%, 25, that's blue, and then it goes towards green. And then if you go beyond 100%, it becomes this color there, and I just show you. I can make it smaller, and the headers are now red, or if you make it larger, the headers are not quite as awful anymore. And you see beautifully what that does. Yeah, you have the change at your fingertips without manually going to hold the engine. This will play so much better. Oh, we wanted to do a cast mid though. Oof, that difference. In general, all intake and header choices have been completely revamped, and all the calculations that you're seeing, like everything about this power torque curve, is completely new. It is just rewritten from the start, and that is also that evolved from the turbo calculations that are new and so much improved. And now all those calculations apply to the naturally aspirated side as well. But not only that, but that code has been expanded a lot and covering a lot more dependencies in an engine. So overall just beefed up enormously. Alright, so let's see. It's now complaining about headers being a little too small. We can tune that out a little, like this. You see what's happening there? Maybe I do want to hold the engine there and then tune that a bit because it's not quite behaving right. What should happen is that when you are entering a section, it auto holds the engine, you make changes, you see your change, and once you're done, it stays up like this until you change another list of items or another slider. Then it auto holds the old engine, like the one that you just made, and allows you to see the differences in that new section. Like for instance on the exhaust side, like there. But okay, I'm quite happy with the header size here. Let's go to the manifold. That is probably choking us up on the top end. So let's make it slightly larger. Oh yes, beautiful. We don't want to make it too large though, because then we are getting rid of some of the mid-end there and some resonances. Mid-end. Words. That's not the correct one. You know what I mean though. So yes, we've now tuned that. Exhaust can get a little larger as well so that we're not choking. Perfect, okay. I think that is done. And we haven't used much of the new stuff here. And now let me show you that it is going deeper. Way deeper. How do we know this engine is actually tuned well? I don't know, you can't really tell. I mean, you could have wiggled some sliders and stuff, but you don't really know if you're missing something. Like, for instance, compression. Let's take a look here. Conrods, the engine has some unutilized octane. Consider using higher compression. That is our latest addition to the warning system. That is for one of the new maps. So let me show you. Well, fuel map. This one probably needs to be moved towards the end of this carousel because it's not as important as what we're going to see here. Fuel efficiency map. Whoops! There is something happening there, and that is the VVL switchover. It's slightly confusing to look at. Fuel efficiency map, very important, and especially in terms of, or in the context of building a car. Not quite as important when just building an engine. But you see the peak efficiency there, we're reaching 27% with this setup. And then we have our timing map. And that one is very important. And also the reason for why this one is spitting a notification at you. Oh, let's see. You should up the compression. Yes, let's do that. And we see what happens here. What does this one tell you? In this timing map, it tells you the power lost from retarding timing. So if you had to retard timing, and that is in comparison to peak torque timing, then you will be losing some power. But you are able to run much higher compression because now you've retarded timing a little bit, and that allows the rest of the engine to be more green. like that, I mean, on the timing map. What does that mean? That means that at lower throttle settings, you reach better efficiencies and have more power available to you early on. And that is, of course, great for economy, or fuel economy. And if you make it too extreme, well, it's... Oh, by the way, you see there's a little bit more slider wiggle room there, right? So 15-1 is no longer the maximum. Go all the way to 16. And now you see, oof, yeah, this doesn't look too good. Do you see one thing that is absent? Knock. Yeah, it has, in that regard, become a lot easier to build engines in automation. Knock has never been really realistic before, in that why would any manufacturer just put out an engine that knocks? That is like not a thing. What would happen is that, oh yeah, they see the engine is knocking a little bit in this area up here, so we're going to pull some timing out of it, and then it's fine. So yes, the answer is yes, you can run 16-0. That would be a very, very bad compression ratio. Now 16-1 compression, perfectly fine to run it, but yeah, you're not going to make the most power with it. Like, look at this. Like, lower compression actually making more power, because that means that you don't have to pull timing, or as much timing, rather. So it is a compromise. And that compromise is, looking at the fuel efficiency map, that for lower compression ratios in general, you can get pretty much optimal timing for full throttle running. That gives you maximum power at full throttle. Racing engines would be set up kind of this way, because what you do want is full throttle performance. You don't really care about eco-driving in the city with your race car. But if you're eco-driving in the city with your not race car, higher compression ratios allow you to drive at 50% throttle while being in this greenish area. And that means higher efficiency. And you will see that in the fuel efficiency map as well, that the whole efficiency is moving down slightly and just expanding downwards towards lower throttle settings. Because at lower throttle settings, the cylinder pressure will be lower, and a lower cylinder pressure means that you don't knock as quickly, because the flame speed is much lower. So let me give you just a really brief summary of this. This is kind of the look... we should switch away from VVL, that is confusing. Okay, there you go. This is the kind of look you are probably going to have from a race-ish engine. Very, very high end. Then of course you also would be running more cam profile, but that's something that we can disregard right now. Then your normal-ish tune engine would be looking something like this. It's a fair compromise between the two. You're getting some yellow on top here, so losing 3-ish% of power from it, but you are gaining a lot of economy down low, and of course response as well. And then if you're going all out eco, you are going to push that quite extreme, something like this, and then you have this green band really pushed down as much as you possibly can without severely causing massive issues to emissions and so on. That is not implemented yet. That is something that I still need to do. But that would be affecting this. So, okay. Now you basically know what this timing map is. But what, Kirob? No, I don't know what this timing map is, because you've only talked about the green stuff and up. Yes, I get that you lose timing from retarding timing compared to peak torque timing. That's good and all, but what is this blue stuff? Ah, that's a fair question, he said while talking to himself in third person, and now that's getting really weird. Yeah, so when you are in the green band, or right at this border, you are at peak torque timing, which means the optimal timing for power. Then that means that below that here, you are not at peak torque timing anymore, and you are losing power. But from what? you're losing power through not being able to advance timing more because you're falling off the other end of the timing curve if you would. That means if you would advance timing more, you would actually lose power and not gain any power. That means that you have unused octane. So this lower section here tells you how much power you're losing due to unutilized octane. Speaking of octane and unutilized, let's talk really quickly about how this slider has changed since we last talked about it. I don't think it has changed much, if at all. What this one now does, and that's implemented, is giving you some margin for how much octane you're using. You see right now we're using 95 out of 95 octane. We have set 95 premium here. But now we can tell our engineers to adjust the timing map such that we only use 92 octane. So that would be +3 here, free margin. And now you see we are using 92 octane, and on the timing map you would see that we had to actually retard timing some more. See that? This is like we are keeping a margin of 10 octane on this engine. What does that do? Well, let's clear the held engine and hold the engine there. So if we move from margin to no margin, you see that we are dropping a little bit in reliability, but we're gaining fuel efficiency, and of course we're using more octane there. And we require more cooling because the engine is going to make more power. Also, this is going to affect environmental resistances. That is not yet implemented though. So this is all looking pretty functional, you would say, and you would be right about that. I think the question is valid to ask, then why don't we have this yet? The answer is, it doesn't feel quite right yet for the depth this provides. There needs to be more feedback on what is going on and why some of those things that you now can adjust need to be adjusted. And the consequences of that, like the timing map and so on. So we are looking into really making this a good experience, even for, or especially for long-term automation players who have grown accustomed so much to the existing options and what they do. And frankly, people have been misled a lot by how the game previously worked, which, of course, it is a game and makes abstractions and simplifications. But now we have ripped away one of those layers of abstractions and simplifications, and all of a sudden those previous abstractions and simplifications are running into a lead wall. And then you lick it, and then you think you're stupid. Because after all, it turned out you knew nothing about engines. That's a harsh reality. And one that hit myself as well when I was building all these new dependencies and reading research papers. And it's like, oh shit, there's a lot more to it than old automation would convey. We have this beautiful graph, by the way, is a new one. I don't know why the fuel system line is being shown there. But this basically shows you along the rev range what kind of flows you're utilizing, and that is influencing resonances along the way. You do need to flow enough through the intakes and or the manifold and the headers in order to get resonances. So if you just open it up to get the maximum top end, you're going to miss out on some of the mid-range stuff. And this time around, I found the right word. But now let me show you these new mechanics in the context where they actually matter, for the most part. So let's head back here and open in the car designer my little test vehicle. It's a carved one, and this one is a kind of eco / cheapo build. And now this engine that I've built, also check out the power and torque. The torque curve is just looking way nicer now. A 1.4 liter inline 4, and nothing too special either. And this has a smaller variant size there. Yes, we are running reasonable compressions. You will be loving to hear that with all these new mechanics, compression now is a lot more realistic than it previously was. Might still need some tweaking here and there, but in general, it is very close to what you would expect. And now carbs don't all have to run like 7.0, but you can make carbed engines with 10-to-1 as well, if you wanted to, and in some circumstances that is perfectly viable. So while we are here, let me hold this engine and then change around some of this stuff. The manifold is already tuned pretty well. It is getting to 90% right there at the end of the rev range, and then at peak power it is at 82, and at peak torque it's at 60-ish%. Could be a little smaller if we wanted to push for extra low end. You see that happening there, but that would mean that we are sacrificing a fair amount of the top end. So I'm going to go right back there. But more importantly, carb size. The flow here, the specifications of the carb still might be tuned because it's slightly inconsistent with how we determine the other flows. But let me show you what it does. So you can now make the carb larger or smaller. And that is not something that happens for the electronic fuel injection systems. But you can make your carb larger, and in this case it doesn't do much because it was already a little bit too large. But if you make it smaller, on the other hand, you see that you are gaining some low end, but also you're severely cutting into the top end. So if you make it too small, yeah, that's not great. SU carbs, the ones that are the eco carbs here, they are flowing rather poorly, and they are going to cut off your flow even though you're using two. Like here, we instead get around with using a single carb, problem being that overall that is less efficient because it's just a single carburetor as well. If we go for two and make it smaller, so that we are getting back some of that in that mid-range efficiency. I don't think you can make 4-barrel carbs small enough to be reasonable here. No, you can. With the 4-barrel single carb, you can. But because there is still just one point of distribution, that is not really as nice for the octane requirements of the engine as is to have two carbs, which in turn make the engine much harder to maintain because you need to tune two carbs instead of one. And of course also more expensive. The overall tuning of these and tweaks balance still needs to be looked at a little bit more, but the mechanics for sizing carbs is in and has the appropriate effects. But why was I here? Well, I wanted to show you this. Right. What are these crosses in there? What are these crosses in there, Killrob? What are these crosses in there? And there too, what are you doing? These crosses are your fuel economy test and where the car runs while it is doing those cruise tests. And it shows in parentheses the gear it is currently using. And of course this is rather nice to look at, but also rather useful, because here you see that, oh, okay, the cruising in 4th gear right now happens right there where it's almost the most efficient. It's around-ish 83% throttle, and that was 2,500 RPM. So now, where do you actually need this stuff? The answer is, of course, in the drivetrain tab, and look at that. There we have it. So now you can change these, and you can see them change around. Yeah, that way was not that great. Now everything is done in 4th gear. Yeah, so fuel economy calculations have become way more realistic. The way we did it before was basically take the full throttle curve. We had an efficiency curve for that one, and that was the line graph that you were seeing as the efficiency graph. And then from there we applied a fake throttle that would steal power, but also it would reduce efficiency. So that is no longer needed because now we're simulating the entire engine, not just full throttle. So basically old automation is this top row of pixels here, up there. That was old automation, well, in its previous form. Of course, it didn't have these efficiency calculations, but which also are improved. But yes, so you now see how your gearing affects your economy while driving there, cruising at least. So this was a lot of engine talk. Let's also talk about, briefly at least, something that I was pointed at by fellow developers, and that is the advanced trim settings have gotten a revamp. Are quite a few new options in here, and now all nicely sorted. And what is this thing? These controls are extremely risky, and you would be correct about that. This allows you to copy fixtures, the entire fixture set, the entire fixture table, from one car to another. This means that if you have a creation where, for instance, from 4.1, this works between 4.1 and 4.2. If you, for instance, have a creation that is almost entirely made out of 3D fixtures, and for some reason the body you based it on is gone, is no longer there, then what you could do is open this on the import menu and copy all the fixtures, and then open a new body and then paste all the fixtures, and poof, your car's there again. Well, okay, that's best case scenario, but we have seen examples of that working quite well. So, pretty cool stuff. Also, there are a few new settings for the wheels. Let me see. Here we have some nice profile, and maybe you are more the kind who wants to take photos with racing tires. Why does that not work? Because I'm stupid, it doesn't work. This is the rear tire and this is the front tire. So let's look at the rear tire. What has happened? It's a slack tire. So this is just visuals, of course, but anyway, a nice thing to play around with. And another tiny thing. Just increase the range of the rear force slider so that you can go really low. Before it was limited to 50, now it is 20. So no longer do you need really wacky sizes to achieve what you need for your eco shitboxes that basically brake on the front two wheels and lift on the rear. And back to the main menu we go. I think this is showing quite nicely the new added depth, or at least it scratches the surface of what is there. And what I'm going to do now is build a few example engines for you, just to see how I would be going through tuning those, setting up those new engines. So what should we start with? Maybe let's go with a 1952 engine, and we are going, well, that's 62. We are going with something pretty simple and then a sporty variant of it. So just a simple engine, a 4-banger. Let's make it reasonably small, and there we go. Maybe a little bit on the undersquare side. By the way, this now has a massive effect. Old automation, there was no difference between oversquare and undersquare. Now if you make this for the same capacity, a massive difference has emerged. So yes, you now have a reason to make oversquare and undersquare engines. Let's go for pushrod. It's decent enough. And oh, by the way, found out that aluminium heads are way more important than we thought they were. They actually lower your octane requirements because the temperature gradient through the material is such that aluminium heads are quite a bit cooler than cast iron heads, which makes you auto-ignite much less quickly. And that means less knock, and that means lower octane requirements. Isn't that pretty? So about 5 octane. You gain from that. So it's a massive difference, and that is also the reason why you probably do want to mix materials at some point, because, well, 5 octane, why would you just leave that lying around? You would still be sacrificing that reliability, of course, but yeah, let's make a mixed material engine. Just put a harmonic damper on the standard components. Let's start there, and we wanted to make it pretty simple basic. Let's go with this. There's a little bit higher revs maybe. That's might be too much, but it's looking okay. It's looking okay. Dual eco carb, or keep it simple, keep it cheap. Just make a compact manifold. Oh yes, the technology, the science. We're running this one on 92, and fuel map can go reasonably lean. And cast low, yeah, kind of sucks, but why not? Oh, yeah, this is looking pretty good for the flows. Let me check out the power torque curve. So 100 Newton meters out of what? How much capacity was this? Yeah, 1.7 liters. That is not a good amount of Newton meters per liter, but it's a realistic amount of Newton meters per liter. So I'm just closing down the exhaust a little bit here, because that was the only thing that was not set up to flow quite well. And you see the nice little gain we're making there in the mid-range with doing that, and we are not really losing anything up on top. Now let's just check carb sizing, because that seems to be a little bit yeah, it looks great, and we need to kind of give you different numbers there to not be as confusing, but I'm pretty sure this one is actually strangling the engine up on top. So let's open this up a little, and you can see that happen. Yeah, okay. But there is somewhere the sweet spot. We don't want to lose too much low end. There, okay, that's looking about right. We could also go for cast log, the old one, compact cast, but that is a little too cheap. I do like my torque down there. So we are making a mighty 37 kilowatts. It's perfect, but no, it might not be perfect, because we still need to check if the engine is working as we think. That efficiency doesn't look good. That timing map is awful. We do have the warning of unutilized octane as well. That is not how it's supposed to look. So what we're going to do here now is, yes, first of all, compression. I think we're going to make a nice compromise here. So let's get into the yellow slightly and see what that does to our power torque curve. So we were at, I should hold the engine as well, but we were at 7, I believe. So I'm going to hold the engine there. This is still not quite working as intended, but look at this change. You can see that we're getting more power just for free, basically. And then we're losing power again as we are retarding the engine way too much. And by the engine, I mean the timing. But 8.0 seems to be pretty solid. Let's see what this map says. Yeah, okay, that's solid for power, but not for economy. So what we're going to do now is, I should just have gone back there. Maybe we have to put in some buttons here to access those maps directly, or indeed go for a view that has 4 of them, or 4 graphs right next to each other. That is what I have found really useful when tuning in my simulation, that I just have all the information that I need for the tuning on one screen, so that I don't need to just flip between them and then remember things and so on. So this one is not quite appropriate. I think we do want to go there, like 8.7, and yeah, it's still making good power. So a clearly held engine, and that is all good. I think we are mostly done here. No, not quite. We have not, header flow at peak power. I would say that's a little low. We could go slightly smaller. Yeah, you see how we're gaining some torque here in the mid-range and losing it beyond peak power. And also what we want to do is lower the springs and lifters, because, well, we are not valve floating there, but we don't really need that massive plateau of power where nothing happens. So let's see when it's dropping. There it starts to drop. And that is not causing any issues here. Nope, no valve float. Oh well, there is valve float, but not reliability affecting valve float. And our cam curve, Oh, do we want to have some more low end? Yeah, a little bit more. Something like this. Okay, I think we're done here. Now, that's a solid engine. Doesn't make much power, as an old engine like this would do. Has a decent amount of torque down low and just runs fine. Now, let's make a performance version of this one. So, just going in here, cloning the engine. Where's this? Clone engine variant. Let's see what we can get out of this little piece of shit. Maybe cam 4550? Yeah, and I'm going to go a little lower on the stroke so that we can rev a little higher. And now would be the time to do this. So we're making it under square instead, and a 1.5 liter engine. Yes, little bit more there. There, 1.5. Okay. So this won't have as much beef down low because, well, now we're over square, and over square engines don't necessarily have the best of performance down low. Okay, let's continue on here. We do need to stiffen it up. 69 is very nice, and of course we're going to go ever so slightly higher in revs as well. You could still do 6.5. That is fine. Now, you see this curve. It is very droopy towards the high end, and that is not because of the lifters. There was a little bit of that, but not excessive amounts. So something like this is looking okay. 70 seems to be working out for a cam of 50. And now, let's see, what could we do? Well, probably we are... Yes, carburetor is not running into the issues yet, but the headers are, the exhaust is, and the manifold is. Well, that's a bad combination. We're going for performance mid. Wow! Well, that made a big difference. I really like to see how much difference this now makes. Like, integral design choices. Previously, in automation, there was basically no difference. A little bit of resonance bumps here and there, but now, with us simulating all the flows through the engine, massive differences. So, and as you see in dyno testing, when they change intakes and whatnot, so this is cool stuff, working as intended. Now, we do want to make this slightly smaller, so not too much smaller though. No, this was pretty close to good. There. Now, next problem, headers. Let's switch those out. Cast low, now we're going for tubular mid. And there you see a massive change right away as well. We're losing a little bit of low-end performance as we're switching away from the cast low optimized set of headers and going to a more mid-range optimized set of resonances. And it seems like it is not quite small enough for this one. Although there you see it bite into the top end, but gaining a little... There some way it seems to be good. Exhaust, another problem. We need to open this up, but not too much. Yes, that is looking pretty much good as is. And then we might want to open up the header some more. So just checking in here. Carburetor seems to be good according to the flow bench, but that means that it's, at the moment, a little bit too small. Let's make it larger. And there you have that, but probably we don't want to go for a single barrel, single carburetor, but rather twin. Ooh, yes, that makes a larger... Whoa, look at that difference. Yes, now we're talking. There you go. That's a lot better. Yep, that is looking way more like a performance engine. Now we should check out the new maps as well. Efficiency map, timing map, yeah, it's looking pretty good, but I think we can get some more power if we tune it more for peak throttle or maximum throttle, full throttle run, being more in this light green area instead of yellow, because we are sacrificing around 3% power here. And not quite, because we have gained compression, which also adds power, but overall the compromise is more towards economy, which this engine is not supposed to need. So let's hold the engine and see what happens if we lower compression a little bit. I think 8.0 might be good here. And yeah, hasn't happened much on the low end, but on the top end, quite a lot. That, of course, is hiding the fact that now the economy for the engine is a decent amount worse. Because you don't see the effects on the power-torque curve of just not having that green stuff down here. And now that we have optimized it so much, I think we need to open up the exhaust a little bit more. And there we have it. So 50 kilowatt from a smaller engine than before versus our 37. But yeah, that was a pretty heavy retune. And we call it the performance because creativity is my strength. Two very different engines based on the same family. Yeah, that is working out just as intended. It is beautiful. So now let's go for something a little bit more modern, and maybe we could make a let's make a 90s performance engine that is a little bit more revvy. 1992, and it's again let's make a 6-cylinder. And it's all aluminium. It's dual overhead cam, 4-valve, and we have 100 levels of technology. Now let's go +5. That is a fair amount. We do need a harmonic damper, otherwise this thing rips itself apart. And that was mentioned so often, this harmonic damper thing. People were not getting the difference between torsion-induced oscillations and vibrations. So yes, an inline 6 is super smooth, but it instantly rips itself apart if you don't have a harmonic damper on it. It's a weird concept. I think that is probably something that car magazines have not talked about enough. But yes, so we are going to use some fancier components, or rather, should I say, some actually fancy components. And we're going to try and make an engine that is a little revvy. For that, we do want to have... should we make it a 2.6? Yes. Yes, we shall. A little bit of bottom-end quality, a little bit of top-end quality, but not excessive amounts. Yeah, something like this. VVT, yes please. And yeah, we leave this alone for now, but we are probably going to run something like... start with 70 cam, see where that leaves us. Rev limiter can start at 9.3. I think that sounds rather revvy. And we are going with multi-point, and this isn't implemented yet, the changes here, but per cylinder throttles would give you a little bit more volumetric efficiency for your engine. And then let's start with a performance mid. Need to start somewhere. And yeah, standard size, we're running 98. This is a more high performance mode. Well, we could also run ethanol. And you know what? When it states ethanol here, this is now actual ethanol. It's not cheat ethanol anymore. And when it says methanol, DevMeth, this needs to be changed to be actual methanol. That's 136 octane, but it will be actual methanol. So your AFR will be something like 6:1 instead of like 13:1. And that makes a massive difference. Basically, you're being able to spool your turbo by just pouring fuel into this thing. Yeah, fun times. But let's go to something more reasonable for the era, and that is 95. And now tubular mid. Yeah, that's fair. High flow, nah. Freeway and straight through. Boom! Oh no, the engine explodes, and it tells you engine failed. Oh, why does it tell you twice? Well, it fails once on the torque curve and it fails once on the power curve. Of course. Now let's up this a bit. More of this stuff. What is going wrong here? just valve float? I would think so. This is very, very high revving. Yep, yeah, that's it. Yep, let's put it up there. So we have our 2.6 liter engine here right now that is somewhat poorly tuned, but nice torque curve. A little wavy there from the resonances in the headers and intakes. And we can shift those around using the header size slider, but of course that also changes flow. Let's fix the obvious flow issues first. We've already addressed the exhaust flow, so let's up this by one more because it was still beyond 100% at the very high end. Manifold is next. For naturally aspirated engines, that is killer if that is beyond 100, because that is the only way you get air into the engine. If you have too little pressure up front, you can't produce anything out of the rear. So that is just directly lowering your volumetric efficiency. Need to get rid of this. So we go into the fuel system, manifold size, we up that, and I should be holding the engine there instead, just to see if that makes much difference. There we've gone too far, and I think this is fine. Now, clear held engine and hold again, and we are going to what's next? Headers. So we want to make them slightly larger. No, we don't. That doesn't really help. But you see how the resonances shift here. So how it blows itself up. If you make it smaller, the resonances move towards higher frequencies. Higher frequencies means towards higher RPM. It is a subtle move, but that means that if you are using one of those systems with a massively over-square engine, then you will need to lower this a lot to push towards higher revs, because the base size is based on bore. So if you run a larger bore compared to your capacity, that means you are having less flow on average than what you would expect from a square setup. And the opposite for the undersquare engines, which also helps in terms of fuel economy tuning and low-end tuning. Let's say if you're running a severely undersquare engine, so much longer stroke than bore, that means your headers are on average smaller than what they should be for the flow you generate with that capacity. That means you want to push it to larger, and that means your resonances actually move down in the rev range, so that you can make use of even more eco-tuning there. So, but this is pretty lousy performance. Let's go through these and see what's going on here. Well, that is a problem. If the timing map looks like an ocean, there might be an issue there. Yeah, so, this was compression 7. Okay. Let's hold the engine again. Or I can just use the new system by just holding this one. And there we have a lot more power in there and torque. Just lifting the curve in general. It's very nice. Okay. Making your fuel system better, of course, allows you to use more octane, or it is more efficient in the burning and all that, and you probably can optimize it a bit better. So yeah, you might consider that you want to add a little bit of quality there, just making the engine overall a bit more performant, at a price, of course. But I think we are running out of juice here. This is looking a lot better already in terms of how many Newton meters per liter we are making, but still not quite right. And that is probably because we have too high a cam profile for how high we really can rev, or produce power, I should say, with our intake and exhaust setup. I mean manifolds. They are called manifolds now. So how about we try the performance high, because 8000 is certainly not mid, is it? So here we go, newly held engine, and let's switch to high. Oh yes, we are switching around some of the mid-range to get a lot more high-end. Let's do the same on the header side, and there you go. That is a lot more power. 161 to 205 kilowatts from just the response of the headers and manifolds. And yes, if they are not properly tuned, then they're just choking you off at the top end. Even though they should be flowing enough, but the resonance structure and how they respond is just not made for this kind of speed. So yeah, there you and they're optimized lower, like with this. The design, the overall design of these is for a certain range of RPM and places those resonances at different points. Now you have a beautifully wavy torque curve with all those resonances sitting on top, and we're producing way much more power. Let's see if we can get some more out of it. Nah, it was about right for the springs and lifters. It's looking good. Now let's check out our graphs here again. That's an interesting efficiency map, 26%. And yeah, pretty much perfect in terms of performance tune. And that is the cumulative change that was the headers and manifolds. Rather significant. So I think we are pretty much done here. That's a rather neat little engine we've made. And now what we're going to do is to make a modern turboed eco engine. Aluminium heads and no, not aluminium heads. We are going with ALSI. Dual overhead cam, also inline 4, and we are going to make this one pretty small on the bore and pretty generous on the stroke. 1.6 liter, almost a large. How about making this engine 1 cc short of perfect? Yeah, let's use this harmonic damper and low friction cast. Let's make this very efficient. And for that we probably also want to, in general, just have a little bit of family quality. That is something that has become way more important now as well. Family quality does a lot. Oh, turbocharger. Let's put a turbocharger on there. And we are going to not produce that much power. But intercooler size can be staying around there. We are going to put on Smart Boost. And it is going to be its twin scroll. But normal journal bearing. And not ball bearing. Otherwise, I'll just leave it as is and we shall see what happens. Direct injection. And we're going to put a standard low on it. And then going to run on 95. The fuel map we tune very eco, something like that, and then, yeah, turbo short cast, and three-way, reverse. Alright, there we have something already. It is complaining about air restrictions, just slightly. Manifold is striking. Let's first see why that might be. Well, we are running 1 bar pressure, well, that is a little too much. Let's run 0.5 bar pressure. That's already a little better. And now we are going to open this one up, make it larger. That is looking a lot better. Yes. The turbine is getting up to 70-ish% efficiency, or not 70% efficiency, but rather 70% of the optimal pressure ratio over the turbine of where it would have peak efficiency. Not super important, but something to watch out for a little bit if it's going too extreme. Us being able to slide this all the way to the top means that we are going to shift the resonances much lower. If you're running a turbo, the manifolds are really the only thing that do have resonances still. On the header side, there's not much happening because there's just this constant stream of exhaust gases. The actual resonance, or the actual pulses, are not transmitted across the turbine well. So, something to keep in mind. Yeah, do we want to open up the exhaust? Not really, it's fine. Headers are fine as well. Let's make them slightly larger. Doesn't really matter all too much. Gives us ever so slightly more power. And now the dashed line is indicating that there is that's the NA line, and the top one is the actual turboed line. So that's looking good so far. Now let's go through and tune it. Let's check out our maps. Well, that tells me that our turbo is way too large, because we're just barely touching that efficiency ridge of the compressor map. What you do want to do is get to your plateau, where you reach the boost pressure you desire, and then go across the high efficiency ridge and then stop before it gets red. Let's see if we can achieve that by just making the turbo smaller. There you go. Ooh, it's going really close to the surge. Already surge stress at 15%. And now, oh, that is a feature that is a little bit mind-boggling, but I'm sure you understand when I explain this. So what this is showing is, of course, mass flow through the compressor versus pressure ratio. So what happens if you are at a lower throttle setting and you are reaching the same amount of boost? Well, then you are at the same pressure ratio, but at the same time you are at a lower mass flow. That means you're further to the left. Further to the left is surge. So the line that you see here is at full throttle. That doesn't tell you the whole story, because maybe at 80% throttle or 90% throttle, you're actually in the surge region. Yeah, that is why you have that high amount of surge stress here. That is something that we don't quite know how to properly convey yet, but we need to find a solution for that. And you see now the compressor is... where did it say that? Yeah. It's when we are... Ooh, that timing map. When we are at max power here, at the very end, we are at 130%, so 30% beyond the optimal point in the ridge. And that doesn't mean it's bad. That just means that you're probably using the compressor right. And who would say no to this torque curve? We are fully spooled at 1,400 RPM, and then we remain fully spooled up to, well, when the engine doesn't rev anymore. Why doesn't it rev more? Well, we have the rev limiter that low, that is the answer. So let's make it more normal. And now we are running into more problems. Because, well, where's the compressor map now? It's there. Yeah, because we extended the rev range, we are now extending the mass flow through it, and now all of a sudden we do actually need a larger turbo again. Otherwise we are going way too far into the red and going super inefficient on the turbine. Oh, well, no, not on the turbine. The turbine was doing fine. On the compressor, sorry. This is the compressor map, after all. Almost 30% efficiency right there, but we are still... This is terrible. Okay, let's fix this. This is probably the largest issue here that we are currently having with this engine. And yes, tuning turbo engines properly is much more of a science now, which is nice because it is in reality as well. So let's go back there and see what happens if we increase compression. That's looking good. Timing map, what do you say? Ah, yeah, now we're starting to get there. If you're making a turbo engine, you probably want to press this down a little bit more into the red, because that is on boost, and you're not driving there all the time. This is an eco turbo engine, right? So we do want to have very high efficiency already down here. Yeah, we are now running a turbo engine at 11:1 compression. It is just 0.5 bar of boost, of course, and direct injection, so that is perfectly reasonable. One thing that isn't perfectly reasonable is our cam profile. So let's... Ooh, okay. The valves are starting to choke the engine up on top. That's at 140% flow already. That is... As you're changing the cam profile slider, you're changing the lift as well. And that just means that, yeah, you are going to choke that a fair amount up on top. But, oh, and the manifold again. But I don't want to switch over to standard mid. That loses me so much of my beautiful efficiency down low. Yeah, okay, I don't need your power. Also, we don't need as much lifters. Let's increase that a bit. And there's the valve float, perfect. Yeah, I like it. a little bit of fuel system quality added, and not major amounts. This is looking better and better. Beautifully set up turbo, and yeah, we could go even leaner. 30.6% efficiency according to the old calculations. Our peak efficiency is 33% now. And the timing map pretty clearly shows when we are hitting boost, which is, well, right there from the start. See the lines going down like this. This is the area where we are on boost, basically, down to about 50% throttle. I don't think it is great, though, that we do have additional back pressure from the exhaust. That is something that we do need to get rid of, and won't sacrifice much at all in terms of torque on the low end, because, well, it is that is kind of separated from the rest of the engine by now because of the turbine. And we don't want to have a bad pressure gradient over the turbine. And as you can see, lots of greens and oranges and all kinds of things that look like warnings, but the engine has some unutilized octane. Really? What is going on here? Oh, well, there we have a bug. It is saying that for the NA engine that we have built this on. Yeah, you would be right. But that is good stuff. I believe I've shown a fair amount of range in terms of the new calculations now and talked about a lot of it, including how that ties into the car designer. And there's a lot you can do now that was just not nuanced before. Still not quite done, but we are on, I hope you would agree from what you're seeing here, we are on a very good path to making the game even more enjoyable in terms of engine tuning. Because you can still build the engines as you were able to before, but then the skill ceiling just got blasted off into orbit. And now I hope your brain feels as mushy, if you have come this far, as mine does. And also a quick reminder, check out the links down below to our competition, because that will be amazeballs, as they say. And I hope you enjoyed, and see you guys next time.